In every corner of the world, there are secrets. Stories that have always been beyond understanding. And we've come to uncover those secrets. To explore where darkness never ends. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. Welcome to episode 21. I'm Aditya and today, I bring you 3 terrifying haunted stories. New stories. New week. New fear. In our last episode, episode 20, we explored chilling creepypasta horror stories. If you missed it, the link is in the description, make sure to check it out. So, let's begin episode 21. If you are new here, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe before we dive in. Today, we'll explore 3 haunted stories, each terrifying in its own way. The first story is The Forgotten Messenger. The second story is The House on 13th Street. And the third story is The Smiling Neighbor. If you love horror like this, then you are in the right place, because only on Dynamic Dark will you experience creepypasta-style horror stories blended with real psychological and haunted elements. For the best experience, put on your earphones or headset, let the darkness and suspense surround you. Now let's begin today's first story, The Forgotten Messenger. It started like any other ordinary day. I was scrolling through my old phone, cleaning up apps I hadn't touched in years. That's when I noticed it, a forgotten app buried deep in the App Store. Its icon was faded, almost hidden, as if it had been left there for a reason. Curiosity tugged at me, and I thought, why not? It must be some nostalgic thing from my past, harmless, I told myself. I tapped on it. The screen lit up, casting a pale glow across the dark room. A chill ran down my spine. The app opened slowly, like it had been waiting for me all this time, welcoming me with an interface frozen in another era. At first, it seemed innocent. Few simple messages appeared, greetings, short jokes, nothing threatening. But then, the air around me grew heavier, thick, almost suffocating. Shadows in the corners seemed to stretch and twist like black smoke, whispering words I couldn't understand, voices just beyond hearing. I laughed nervously, trying to dismiss the feeling, but the sense of wrongness only deepened. I stared at the glowing phone, feeling it pulse like a heartbeat, as if alive. The room around me darkened unnaturally, corners swallowing the faint light. I could almost see shapes moving there, shadows of things unseen, spirits waiting. Every notification felt like a breath on my neck, every vibration a warning. And yet, I couldn't look away. I didn't know then that some things are better left forgotten. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. This app was one of them. A door into shadows, into secrets I wasn't ready to face, and into a darkness that had been waiting silently all along. At first, the messages seemed harmless. Random greetings, simple jokes, nothing unusual. I laughed quietly, thinking it was just a glitch in the old app, a leftover from its forgotten coding. But then, the messages started knowing things. Personal secrets. Tiny, intimate details I hadn't told anyone, not even my closest friends. My stomach twisted in dread. How could an app know these things? I tried to dismiss it. Coincidence, I told myself. But each new message grew more precise, more invasive. It knew what I was planning, the conversations I would have, even memories I thought were long buried. Shadows in the corners of my room thickened, curling like black smoke. They stretched across the walls, over the ceiling, creeping along the floor, darker than night itself, almost alive. I could feel them, the weight of them pressing closer, whispering silently, watching, waiting. Every notification made my heart pound harder. The shadows seemed to slither toward me with every vibration, twisting like living things, stretching impossibly long. Faint whispers echoed all around, unintelligible but heavy with malice. My hands shook, and my breath quickened as I held the phone, unable to put it down. The harmless app I had opened out of curiosity was no longer harmless. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, glowing faintly, like a heartbeat, each message drawing the darkness closer. Shapes shifted in the corners of my vision, black figures, barely defined, floating silently, watching me. The air grew thick, cold, suffocating. Every nerve in my body screamed to leave, but my eyes couldn't break away from the screen. The app, the messages, they were alive. And the darkness, it had noticed me. It was patient, it was waiting, and it was hungry. I realized then, with a fear that rooted me to the spot, that ignoring it wouldn't help. The app had crossed a line. Some things, once they notice you, they never let go. And the shadows, the black spirits, they would not release their grip. This wasn't just an app. This was a gateway to secrets, to darkness, a darkness that had been silently waiting for me all along. Ignoring it didn't help. The messages became more persistent, almost alive. At first, they predicted small events. A knock at the door, a phone call from a friend, the flicker of the street light outside my window. Harmless coincidences, I told myself. But then the predictions grew stranger, darker, more personal. It described my dreams before I woke up. It whispered my thoughts before I thought them. It knew what I feared, what I regretted, what I tried to bury deep inside me. And each time I read a message, the shadows in the room grew heavier, thicker, curling like black ink spilling into water. I tried to delete the app, my hands trembling, my thumb hovering over the screen. But no matter what I pressed, the icon remained. Uninstall failed. App not found. It wouldn't leave. The moment I tried again, the phone vibrated with a low, pulsating hum like a heartbeat. Another message appeared, "Why are you trying to leave?" My chest went cold. The phone felt hot in my hands, alive, breathing. The black shapes at the edges of the room stirred, twisting, as though amused. The air grew dense, each breath harder to take, the walls closing in. The app's predictions became commands. Look behind you. Don't turn off the light. Open the window. I refused, my body frozen with terror. But refusing only made the room darker. The shadows stretched across the ceiling, dripping down like tar, sliding closer, whispering in a language I couldn't understand but somehow felt deep in my bones. Their outlines became clearer, black, humanoid figures with hollow faces, watching me without eyes. They didn't move like people. They floated, pulsing with the same rhythm as the air. Their presence pressed into my mind, filling it with static and dread. Every notification sound was like a nail driven into my skull. I realized with horror that the app was no longer just on my phone. It was in the room, in the walls, in the darkness. The phone was just a door. And I had opened it. The black ghosts weren't waiting anymore. They were coming through. It started small. A friend didn't answer my calls. A neighbor's apartment door hung open like a dark mouth, but no one was inside. I told myself it was coincidence. People move away, people leave, but my street was emptying, one person at a time. Their names vanished from my contacts. Their faces blurred out of old photos. Even their voices slipped from my memory like water. The app watched it all, pulsing on my screen, every new message arriving with a low, sickening hum. Then the messages changed. No more jokes, no more greetings, just lists. Names. Dates. Times. The names of the people around me, each one followed by a time that had not yet come. At first, I didn't believe it. But when the time hit, they were gone. The window across from me, always glowing with a neighbor's lamp, went black forever. My best friend's laugh disappeared from my voicemail. Even my own reflection began to look like a stranger. I tried to delete the app, my fingers numb, my thumb shaking over the screen. Uninstall failed. App not found. Each attempt only brought a new message, you can't save them. My phone vibrated like a heartbeat, hot against my skin. The walls around me felt wrong, shifting, bending inward. Shadows on the floor thickened, crawling like spilled ink toward my feet. One night, a message came, look outside. Against my will, I did. The street was full of them, black figures, dozens of them, standing still under the flickering street lights. No faces, no eyes, only hollow silhouettes pulsing in rhythm with my phone. The air trembled, full of static and whispers, a language I couldn't understand but felt deep inside my bones. The ghosts weren't waiting anymore. They were crossing over. I knew, with a kind of cold certainty, that I wasn't just watching people vanish, I was being marked. The app was no longer just a program. It was a doorway. And I had already stepped through it. Every notification was a warning. Every vibration a heartbeat. Sleep became impossible. Even in the dark, I could feel the black shapes moving closer, their hollow faces pulsing in rhythm with my phone. My own hands seemed alien, shaking uncontrollably, hovering over the glowing screen. The messages no longer contained words, just symbols, strings of code that seemed to rearrange themselves with a sinister intelligence. I couldn't tell what they meant, yet I understood everything. They were calling me, pulling me closer. Reality started to blur. The walls of my room bent and twisted as if alive. Shadows stretched impossibly long, crawling over the ceiling, down the walls, across the floor, black tendrils reaching toward me. I caught glimpses of faces in the darkness, friends, strangers, people who had disappeared, all twisted, hollow, screaming silently. Every notification intensified the pressure, the whispers growing louder, filling my mind with static and dread. The phone's glow became unbearable, and yet I could not look away. It wasn't a device anymore, it was a portal. I tried to run, but the shadows moved with me, flowing like black smoke under the door, through the walls, creeping across the floor. Each step made the whispers louder, the heartbeat faster. My vision blurred, the room split into fragments of impossible geometry, and I realized with horror I had already crossed over. The app didn't just control the messages, it controlled reality itself. My body, my mind, my very senses were bending to its will. I was awake, but I was no longer entirely me. The black ghosts weren't just around me. They were inside me, consuming me, pulling me toward a darkness I could never escape. And then, the final message arrived. Not from the app, but directly to my number. I felt my chest tighten as I read the words, "Now it's your turn." Panic surged through me. I looked around, and there was no one left. The streets outside were empty. My neighbors, my friends, Even my family vanished. Silence pressed into me like a physical weight. The shadows in my room had grown enormous, stretching into the corners, crawling up walls and ceiling like dark, living ink. Black figures floated just beyond the edges of the phone's glow, whispering in a language I could feel in my bones, though I couldn't understand it. The phone's screen pulsed with a heartbeat like rhythm, each vibration echoing through my skull. I tried to run, to throw it away, to smash it, but my hands wouldn't obey. The app had merged with reality. Its reach was everywhere, in the shadows, in the walls, in the black shapes surrounding me. Each whisper, each flicker of the glowing symbols pulled me closer to the darkness. My reflection in the dark window wasn't mine anymore. It was hollow, faceless, a shadow of what I once was. The final realization hit me like ice. I had been noticed. The black ghosts, the app, the disappearing people, it had been preparing for me. There was no escape. Every instinct screamed to hide, to disconnect, but it was already too late. The darkness consumed everything, leaving only the glowing phone and the pulsing messages. The last words lingered in my mind, "Now it's your turn." And in that moment, I understood the horror had just begun. Today's second story is The House on 13th Street. It was an old abandoned house, its paint peeling, windows cracked and dark, as if hiding decades of secrets. The neighborhood whispered rumors, strange footsteps at night, flickering lights in empty rooms, fleeting shapes seen in broken windows. Yet, curiosity pulled us inside. The gate creaked like a scream warning us away as we stepped into the overgrown yard. The air was thick, suffocating, carrying a damp, metallic smell that made my stomach churn. Every step we took across the dusty floorboards groaned under our weight, echoing through empty hallways, like the house was alive and listening. Shadows clung to corners, twisting and stretching in unnatural ways. Faint shapes moved just at the edges of our flashlight beams, black, humanoid figures, faceless, watching silently. The walls seemed to breathe, exhaling decades of trapped fear. Each room we entered felt older, heavier, as if the house itself was bending reality. A staircase appeared before us, warped and endless, leading to darkness that shouldn't exist above the first floor. One of my friends froze, staring at a door that had not been there a moment ago. My skin crawled. The house knew we were here. It was alive. It was hungry. The further we went, the more distorted everything became. Light bent strangely around corners, and the air grew colder, thick with whispers I couldn't understand. Dust swirled in unnatural patterns, forming shapes that vanished when we looked directly at them. I could feel a pressure on my chest, as though invisible hands pressed against me, urging me to turn back, but a morbid curiosity kept us moving forward. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last, echoing in the hollow spaces. The house wasn't just abandoned. It was a trap, a living nightmare, and we had stepped right into its heart. Asterisk. At first, it was normal, strange creaks of the floorboards, shadows shifting unnaturally in the corners, drafts that carried whispers we couldn't understand. We told ourselves it was the wind, the old house settling, but deep down, we knew something was wrong. The air felt thicker here, heavier, pressing against our chests. Every step we took echoed too loudly, bouncing off walls that seemed farther apart one moment, closer the next. Then the walls began to breathe. The paint peeled and reformed as though pulsing with life. Doors led to rooms that hadn't existed a moment before. Always twisted impossibly, Stairs led nowhere or looped back into themselves. The house, it was alive. We weren't just exploring it. It was watching us, guiding us, reshaping itself around our fear. Shadows stretched into humanoid forms, black as ink, faceless, hovering just beyond our lights, pulsating as if syncing with our heartbeats. Every whisper grew louder, carrying syllables we didn't recognize but felt deep inside our bones. Floorboards groaned under invisible weight. Sometimes, we caught glimpses of figures, friends we came with, but distorted, their faces blank, limbs moving like marionettes. Panic clawed at us, but the curiosity, or the madness, drove us forward. The house seemed to pulse with each step we took, walls breathing, ceilings bending, the air growing colder, heavier, almost alive. And then, a door opened slowly, on its own, revealing a room darker than night, and we knew this house didn't just contain fear. It was fear. Asterisk. One by one, my friends began to notice the oddities. At first, it was small things, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, doors we had passed before now opening to rooms that didn't exist. Time seemed to loop strangely. A hallway we had just walked down would appear again, unchanged, as if mocking us. Shadows stretched and recoiled unnaturally in the corners of our vision. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing into our lungs with every breath. Whispers drifted along the walls, unintelligible but urgent, like voices warning us or taunting us. Every so often, a black, faceless humanoid figure would flicker just beyond our flashlight's beams, floating silently, pulsing with some dark intent. My friends shivered as they saw glimpses of themselves, distorted reflections, faces twisted and hollow, watching back with blank eyes. One of my friends froze, pointing to the staircase that now seemed impossibly long, vanishing into darkness. Another swore the hallway behind us had rearranged itself, doors in different places, walls warped. Panic began to settle like a weight in the room, and yet we couldn't leave. Every step we took seemed to pull us deeper, as though the house itself was alive, reshaping itself around our fear. Then, footsteps echoed just behind us, slow and deliberate, though no one was there. A black shadow flickered across the walls, taller than any of us, moving against gravity, defying logic. The house wasn't just haunted. It was sentient, aware of our presence, feeding on our terror, and slowly drawing us toward rooms we might never escape from. Asterisk. As we ventured deeper, the house seemed to come alive. Shadows no longer clung to corners, they moved, drifting along the walls, gliding above the floors, hovering just beyond our flashlights. Black, faceless figures floated slowly, silently, twisting and pulsing in rhythm with our rising panic. Their movements were unnatural, gliding over broken furniture, through doors that shouldn't exist, flowing like smoke yet solid enough to feel their oppressive presence. We could hear them whispering, unintelligible but insistent, voices brushing past our ears like icy fingers. Dust swirled around them, forming shapes that dissipated when we tried to focus. One of my friends screamed as a shadow passed through their shoulder, cold and tangible, leaving goosebumps and dread in its wake. The walls seemed to breathe, expand, contract, and shift with every heartbeat, guiding us toward the center of the house, the very heart of its malevolence. Time warped completely. Hallways looped back onto themselves, doors appeared where none existed, and the black spirits drifted past, pausing only to stare with hollow, empty faces. Each movement of these floating entities was deliberate, like they were observing, judging, leading us further into a nightmare from which escape felt impossible. The air became thick with whispers, the scent of decay and dampness stronger, our breaths labored, hearts racing, every instinct screaming to flee. But the house had already trapped us. Asterisk. Time lost all meaning. Always twisted impossibly, looping back on themselves. Faces began to appear in the walls, silent mouths screaming, eyes hollow and pleading. My friends whispered, trembling, pointing at shapes that weren't really there, but they were. Shadows reached down from the ceiling, long black fingers brushing against our skin, cold and intangible, yet heavy with menace. The air itself seemed alive, pressing against our lungs, carrying whispers we couldn't understand but felt deep in our bones. Every step we took made the floorboards groan, and the house pulsed in rhythm with our rising panic. Black, faceless humanoid spirits floated through rooms, drifting past walls and furniture, circling us, moving silently like predators. Some paused near our flashlights, tilting and pulsating as if sensing our fear, then gliding away to appear elsewhere, always observing, always hunting. We tried to scream, tried to run, but the house reshaped itself around us. Doors led nowhere, always stretched endlessly, and the temperature plummeted as if the house was breathing darkness into the rooms. Every whisper, every creak, every shadow was deliberate, as though the house was learning our fear, feeding on it. And then, a sudden chill, like 1,000 fingers brushing over my skin at once, and I realized the house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, hungry, and we were trapped in the center of its malice. Asterisk. Finally, only one friend remained. Exhausted, trembling, we thought escape was possible. We sprinted toward what we thought was the exit, heartbeats pounding, flashlights shaking. But reality shifted. The door we had been running toward for what felt like hours never existed. The hallway stretched endlessly, twisting back on itself, each step bringing us deeper into the house's dark heart. Outside, the neighborhood carried on, unaware of our terror, oblivious to the nightmare that had swallowed us. Our screams, our footsteps, even our shadows erased. The house had rewritten reality itself, severing us from the world beyond its walls. The black, faceless spirits floated silently, circling, pulsing, as if amused by our futile struggle. Every whispered voice, every shadow, every touch of icy air reminded us the house didn't just trap bodies. It trapped souls. I tried to call out, to make someone notice, but the phone in my hand felt dead. The world outside didn't recognize us. The walls closed in, breathing darkness, shadows stretching and twisting, fingers of black reaching toward me. And then, silence. Only the faint pulse of the house's heartbeat remained, echoing in my mind. I realized with a final, chilling clarity the house had won. We were gone. Erased from the world. Trapped forever in a living nightmare, watched endlessly by the faceless spirits. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, the house waited for the next curious souls to enter, feeding once again on fear and oblivion. Asterisk. Today's final story is The Smiling Neighbor. It started innocently enough. A new neighbor moved into our quiet building. At first, no one thought much of it. People come and go all the time. But there was something off about him. His smile, it was too wide, too unnatural. It stretched across his face like it had been carved there. And no matter the time of day, no matter what he was doing, that smile never faded. The first time I met him, it was late at night in the hallway. I was coming back from work, exhausted, when I saw him just standing there under the dim light bulb, staring straight ahead. He turned toward me slowly, his head tilting just a little too far, and that grin spread across his face. His eyes, though, stayed completely blank. They didn't move, didn't focus, almost like he wasn't really looking at me, but through me. He didn't speak, not a word. Just smiled and walked into his apartment without breaking eye contact. I laughed it off at first, told myself maybe he was just socially awkward. But then I noticed things. He never carried groceries, never checked his mail, never left the building during the day. And yet, at night, I would hear the sound of footsteps pacing above my ceiling long after midnight. Sometimes soft humming, sometimes low whispers, almost like chanting. What unsettled me most was how other tenants reacted. Normally, new neighbors get greetings, casual conversations. But this time, no one spoke his name. When I tried bringing him up, people went quiet, their faces pale, as if I'd broken some unspoken rule. I told myself it was nothing, just paranoia. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. A neighbor shouldn't feel like a shadow pressing against your chest. A smile shouldn't feel like a warning. And his felt like both. At first, it was only whispers in the building, a neighbor hadn't come home, a child missing from the playground, an old man's door left open but his apartment empty. People whispered, speculated, maybe they'd moved away in the middle of the night, maybe they'd gone on a sudden trip. But the hallways grew quieter, emptier. The building itself felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. I started to notice a pattern. Every single one of them, every missing face, had walked past his door. I'd see them with my own eyes, bags in hand, keys jangling, stepping down the hallway, passing his apartment, and then, nothing. The hallway beyond his door seemed to stretch longer and darker each time, like a throat swallowing its prey. They were never seen again. I tried to be rational. I checked the security cameras, but they always glitched at the exact second someone vanished. I lifted my phone, trying to take a photo, but the images dissolved on the screen, pixel by pixel, fading into static before I could save them. Even when I scribbled the details down on paper, the ink bled and faded until the page was blank, as if the very act of exposing him was forbidden. The building itself seemed to erase any trace. And then there was his smile. Always that smile. Every time another person disappeared, I'd find him standing perfectly still in the hallway. Silent. Watching. His grin wider than before, stretching unnaturally, the corners of his mouth threatening to split his skin. His lips too thin, his teeth too many, too sharp, teeth that didn't belong in a human mouth. It wasn't joy. It wasn't kindness. It was hunger. It was possession. And as his smile grew, so did the dark, creeping along the walls, curling at the corners of my vision, reaching for me. Somehow, I knew he was aware of me. That every time I watched him, he was also watching me back. Not with his eyes, but with something else. Something inside the smile. The air grew colder with each passing day, like the building itself was exhaling frost. My breath hung in front of me, even though it wasn't winter. Every step down the hallway echoed too loudly, as though someone or something was walking just a few inches behind me. Then the mirrors began to change. In the elevator, in the bathroom, even in the cracked glass panel near the stairwell, reflections no longer belonged to me. They shifted when I didn't. Faces appeared behind my shoulder, fleeting shapes with hollow eyes and stretched mouths, black silhouettes of people who shouldn't exist. Sometimes the reflections whispered, lips moving soundlessly, and when I turned to look, there was nothing but empty hallways. The walls themselves had started to hum with a low, pulsing vibration, like a heartbeat echoing through the pipes. I could feel it under my fingertips, a rhythm not my own. And through it all, that smile. Always that smile. Even when he wasn't there, I could sense in the shadows a glint of too many teeth, a curvature of lips too wide to be human. At night, I'd see it clearer. From the corner of my vision in the hallway. In the dark reflection of a window. Grinning from a spot in the ceiling that had no place for a face. Watching, unblinking, patiently. The more I tried to ignore it, the closer it came. And I began to wonder, was he the one haunting the building, or had the building created him to feed itself? I tried to warn everyone. My friends, the building management, even the police. I sent messages, left voicemails, even handed them notes scribbled in my own shaking handwriting. But one by one, every attempt dissolved. Cameras malfunctioned the moment I pointed them at his door. Videos cut to static. Photos blurred and corrupted in my gallery, faces smearing into black shapes. The paper I wrote on bled with ink until the words were unreadable, my handwriting twisting into symbols I couldn't recognize. When I spoke, my own voice grew faint, drowned out by a soft hiss, a whispering chorus that slithered through the walls, filling my ears until I couldn't hear myself. Sometimes, people would look right at me while I spoke and blink, confused, as if I'd never said a word. As if the sound never reached them at all. The building itself seemed to protect him. Lights flickered off when I approached his door. Locks jammed when I tried to leave my apartment. I'd find the hallways rearranged, leading me back to the same spot, back to that door with the number that had no number. And always, somewhere down the corridor, that smile waiting in the dark, teeth glinting faintly like a predator in the undergrowth. I realized with mounting terror that this wasn't just about him anymore. The building had become a living thing, a conspirator, feeding on silence, smothering the truth. And I was its next meal. Every day, his presence crept closer, doors slammed shut, lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Black spirits drifted through the halls, faces twisted in silent screams, frost clinging to my skin. At night they gathered, whispering words I couldn't understand. And always that smile. Floating in the dark, stretching across walls and ceilings, following me. The building wasn't trapping him inside, it was trapping me for him. And then, one night, I looked into the mirror. At first, I expected his reflection, but it wasn't there. Instead, his smile stretched across my own face, wide, unnatural, inhuman. My eyes hollow, my lips shut. The neighbor hadn't just haunted the building, he had claimed me. Now I wait in silence, trapped, smiling just like him. That was the end of episode 21 of Dynamic Dark. If you enjoyed these terrifying stories, make sure to comment below which story scared you the most. The best comment will be pinned by me, Aditya. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and family. Or you can suggest a creepypasta or international horror topic in the comments. The suggestion with the most likes will be featured in the next episode. Until then, keep listening to terrifying stories, because we'll be back soon with episode 22. And in the next episode, we'll bring you creepypasta horror stories. And yes, that will be the English episode. Stay tuned and continue watching the horror episodes of Dynamic Dark. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss notifications for new horror episodes. With new fears, new darkness, and new secrets. Join the Dynamic Dark family and become a part of the journey with 3 brand new stories.